So, hi guys, today we are going to talk about the economics section of the CFA Level 1 Schweizer books. And today our topic is going to be topics in demand and supply analysis. This topic assumes that the candidate is already familiar with some prerequisite sections, such as supply and demand, utility maximizing consumers, products, cost curves of the firm. So, if you have a prerequisite understanding about these topics, it will be easy for you. But if you don't have any understanding of these topics, it's gonna be a bit challenging for you. So today we are going to cover elasticity, what is elasticity, and the types of elasticity. So we are going to talk about the own price elasticity, income elasticity, and cross elasticity, and how they differ each other. Then we will shift to the substitution and income effect. You will have an initial understanding what is substitution and what is the income effects. Then we are going to talk about the factors of production. We are going to talk about the shutdown and break even under the perfect and imperfect competition, why they are differ each other. And finally, we will explain the economies and diseconomies of the scale. So let's begin. First, own price elasticity of demand. Guys, first you have to understand what is elasticity. So elasticity is the responsiveness of the demand to the price of the good. So I know that you already know that the price and demand of the good is interdependent. So when the price of the goods change, subsequently demand changes. So the magnitude of this change is measured by the term of elasticity. In other words, own price elasticity is the measure of responsiveness of the quantity of demanded to the change in price. So the simple formula will be percentage change in quantity demanded divided to percentage change of the price. So this ratio will give us the elasticity. So there is no unit of elasticity. Elasticity is just number. It can be 1, it can be 2, it can be, 0 point something. So it doesn't have any unit. So the good can be elastic and inelastic. What makes goods to be elastic and what makes the goods to be inelastic? If the small increase or small decrease, let's call small changes in the price, causes a considerable changes in the quantity demanded, then we call that this good is elastic. So, in contrast, if the change in price makes a little, not considerable change in demand, we call that this good or demand for this good is inelastic. So, here you can see that there's in figure 1, it has been demonstrated in a couple of graphs. First graph, you see the vertical line. This is the perfectly inelastic demand. So here elasticity is 0. So remember, in perfectly inelastic demand, elasticity is 0. What is the perfectly inelastic demand? It means that from the graph you can see that whatever the price changes, the responsiveness of the demand to the change in price is 0. So if you increase price 100%, demand will not respond. So, in contrast, perfectly elastic demand is horizontal line. Means that if you change the price even a very small, very negligible amount, the quantity of demanded will increase incredibly, infinitely. So here we say that the demand curve is perfectly elastic. So in conclusion, just remember that if the own price elasticity, if the absolute term of own price elasticity is greater than 1, we call that the demand curve is elastic. So let's recall the formula of the elasticity. Formula of the elasticity is the percentage change of demand divided by percentage change of price. If this ratio is greater than 1, it means that percentage change in demand is greater than percentage change in the price. In other words, if you increase the price, demand will respond greater than changing in price. That's why the ratio is greater than 1. In contrast, if the absolute term of own price elasticity is less than 1, we call that this is inelastic demand curve. So in inelastic demand curve, to be less than 1, denominator should be higher than numerator. Means that the responsiveness of the change in demand to the change in price is low. So price change overweights demand change. Guys, so logically you may ask, what causes to the demand curve to be elastic and inelastic? So the first cause is the number of substitutes. What does it mean? Imagine that there is a drug which is very essential for you in order you to be healthy. So what you will do? You will definitely purchase it. So let's assume that the price of this drug is $100. Okay? So tomorrow you see that the supplier or producer of this drug increases its price twice. So it's now currently it's not $100, but it's now cost $200. So what you're gonna do? You would definitely purchase it. Why? Because it is essential for your healthy lifestyle. So that's why we say that if this drug does not have any substitute, if the producer is the one and only producer of this drug, whatever their price will increase, it is essential for your life, it's essential for your health, and you definitely gonna purchase it. So in contrast, let's say, however, imagine that there is a couple of gasoline station near to your home. So they produce the same gasoline type and they sell this gasoline and their prices is identical. Imagine that tomorrow one of these gasoline stations increases its price. So what happens? In this case, no one will go and buy there, or number of their consumers will considerably decrease because they are a couple of rivals and they sell the same quality of the gasoline. So it means that if the substitution is very good, so small increase in price will cause your demand to be very elastic, to decrease. In conclusion, we say that if there is a very low number of substitution in the market, the demand curve will be inelastic. If there is considerable amount of very good substitute in the market, it will be elastic curve. That's why producers whose products has a very good substitute in the market should be very careful when they change the prices. So, degree of substitution is the first reason. Now let's go to the second reason. Guys, the second reason for the demand elasticity is the portion of income that's spent on a good. Portion of income spent on a good. What does it mean? It means that the larger the proportion of income you spend some good, the more elastic individual demand curve. What does it mean? Just imagine that you earn $1,000 per month, and every month you purchase a small toothpaste, just $1. So negligible amount for compared to your overall budget. So what happens? If the producer of this toothpaste increases the price of this toothpaste for $2, it's still negligible for you. So you again go and buy this toothpaste. But in contrast, imagine that you are going to buy a house. If the house price increases even 10%, not 100%, but 10%, it will amount to considerable. It will considerably increase compared to your budget. So in this case, it became more elastic. So guys, the logic is that the higher the proportion of the price of this good compared to your budget, it's more elastic. The less inelastic, high elastic. And the final reason is the time. Elasticity of demand tends to be greater the longer time of the period since the price change. So for example, when energy price of utility initially changed, it initially became inelastic because not all the consumers responded. But after time, some consumers cannot resist Okay, some consumer cannot resist that. That's why day by day some of the consumers change their mind. They don't use this kind of electric, or they find a new way, for example, more efficient window, better insulation, or etc. So it means that the more time period passes, more consumers try to shift their mind, which causes more elastic demand curve. So guys, remember, the longer the time period, the more elastic demand. So now just remember that it's very important you to understand that elasticity, despite of the fact that this is the ratio of demand and percentage change in demand and percentage change in the price, the elasticity is not the slope of the demand curve. Okay, elasticity is not the slope, because in the demand curve, I assume you already know the demand curve. Let's say demand curve is downward sloping. In demand curve, elasticity, guys, is not the same in all the points of the curve. Okay, so from this graph you can see that in higher point elasticity is high. In middle point there is a unitary elasticity, and is the low point, this is low elasticity. Just a very quick shortcut: the higher the point in the demand curve, the more elastic it is. The lower, less elastic, or in other words, inelastic. So guys, remember, here we have like prices and here we have quantities. So in each point of the demand curve, we can find the total revenue. Okay, why? Because we have a couple of variables, price and demand, or price or quantity. You just multiply it and get the total revenue. If you will just test all the points, you will see that the revenue maximizing point is the point where the elasticity is unit. Okay, so it means that in point B, the total revenue is greatest. In other words, this is the point of greatest total revenue, because if you multiply 4.5 to, let's say, 45, you will get the greatest total revenue. Now let's talk about the income elasticity of demand. So until now we have talked about the own price elasticity of demand. It means that the elasticity of demand in terms of its own price. But guys, let me tell you something. Until this point, we were in a ceteris paribus area. What does it mean? We take all other variables as a constant. When we say all other variables, we mean like we take the income of the individual constant, we take price of other goods constant. But now let's just challenge these conditions. Income elasticity of demand is the elasticity of demand in terms of the income of the individual. What does it mean? So the formula is again very simple. Just when you see elasticity, it means that this is the ratio. If this is own price elasticity, it is the ratio of the quantity demanded, changing quantity demand to changing quantity price. If this is income elasticity, it is percentage change in demand to percentage change of income. If this is cross price elasticity, we will later talk about. So the ratio, so the logic is the same. This is the ratio and this is the ratio of the change in demand to change in responsive point which we evaluate the elasticity. So in terms of income elasticity of demand, at the first glance, normal logic will say that, okay, if the income is increasing, so the demand for the product will increase. At the first glance, yes, you are right. And for the goods which this logic works, we say that they are normal goods. It means that in normal goods, there is a positive elasticity. It means that higher income, demand increase. Lower income, demand decrease. Let's recall one example. For example, your telephone. If you have $2,000 per month wage, you will buy one telephone. If you have $10,000, you will buy 3 or 4 telephones for yourself, for your family members. It means that your price, your income increase causes demand for these increases. Okay, but guys, this logic does not work everywhere. We are economists and we have to challenge all the assumptions. We have inferior goods as well. What is inferior goods? Inferior goods, as it can clearly seen from its name, is inferior. It means that when your income increases, demand for these goods decreases. So interesting, right? For example, let's say low quality clother. Low quality clother. Initially, you were very poor, so you purchased very low quality inferior clothers. So imagine that in the country, all the people, or let's say majority of the population, are poorer. So what happens? All of them will go and buy low quality clothers. But imagine after several years, economy considerably changed and now the income of the people increased. So what the population will do, they will no longer go and buy the low quality clothes because now they are wealthy. They will go and buy a very fashionable clothes. What happened? Their income increased, but demand for these low quality clothes decreased. So this is what we call inferior goods. So inferior goods logic is vice versa. Income increase, demand decrease. But for normal goods, this is like a normal logic. When income increase, demand for this good increases. So for normal goods, we have positive elasticity. Why? Because in positive elasticity, we have positive numerator and positive denominator. Okay? Income increased and demand increased. Increase and increase, these two positive numerator and denominator makes the ratio to be positive. But for inferior goods, increase in price, decrease in quantity, 1 plus, 1 minus. So ratio will be minus. So we will have negative elasticity. So guys, so far we have already discussed and explained own price elasticity and income price elasticity. Now it's time to discuss the cross price elasticity of demand. As you remember, I mentioned that while we were explaining the own price elasticity of demand, we said that we assumed that the prices of other goods are the constant. But in real world, we know that nothing is constant, everything is changing, including the price of related goods. So in cross price elasticity of demand, we measure how the demand of the specific good is change or react or respond, or to what extent it is sensitive to the change in price of its related good. Now I want to talk about the substitutes and complements. So substitute is the good which can substitute to its related good. For example, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Despite the fact that their tastes are different, but we can say that if you don't want to drink, if you enter to the market, if you see that there is no cola, you can buy the Pepsi. Or if you intended to buy a Pepsi, if you enter and see that there is no Pepsi, you can easily buy a Coca-Cola. So this is the substitute. They can substitute each other. And also we have a complement goods. What is complement good? It means that, guys, they complete each other. They are together means something. For example, automobile and gasoline, or motorcycle and helmet. They are together a complement. They complete each other. If you buy an automobile, you will need a gasoline, or vice versa. If you buy a motorcycle, you will most probably need helmet. So let's just analyze how the prices of one good can affect the demand of the other goods in substitute products and in complement products. Guys, imagine that one day you see that the price of the Coca-Cola increased dramatically. So what you will do? You will most probably go and buy Pepsi. So in the increase in prices of one good, increase the demand of other good, we call that they are substitute. In cross price elasticity, substitute products has positive cross price elasticity. Why? Because in ratio, both numerator and denominator are positive. Means that the ratio is greater than 0. Now let's explain the complement goods. Just imagine the prices of motorcycle increases dramatically. What does it mean? It means that less people will buy the motorcycle. Less people buying motorcycle means that the demand for helmet will decrease because the helmets are used while you're driving a motorcycle. So what happened means that in the complement goods, increase in the prices of one good results decrease in quantity demanded other goods. So in this case, numerator and denominator, one is positive and the second one is negative. What happens? Cross price elasticity becomes negative. So remember guys, if the cross price elasticity is greater than 0, we say that these goods are substitutes. Yes, if they are negative, we say that these goods are excellent complements. Now let's try to make a calculations. We will explain the calculations of both three elasticities in separate sections.